Hey guys, welcome to Advanced JavaScript. In this course, we are going to be covering jQuery with JSON and Ajax. Before we begin, let me quickly introduce myself. So, my name is Kaustubh Bharge. I am a senior instructor at coding bootcamps. I know my name is hard to pronounce, so you can call me KG. I'm a senior instructor at coding bootcamps. I've been teaching coding since 2017 at High School Technology Services as well as coding bootcamps. I work as a full stack web developer at my firm in Chicago since 2018, and I have a master's degree in computer science from Illinois Institute of Technology. So that's me. Let's now quickly look at the session outline. So in this session, we are just going to be covering the basic fundamentals of JavaScript that we learned in the previous course. We're going to keep this session short and quick because we need to just refresh our knowledge of the basic JavaScript concepts so that we can be confident enough to dive into the much more advanced concepts. Okay, so we are going to be covering the strings, literals, arrays, and functions that we learned in the previous course. We're just going to be quickly going over them and make sure we have our foundation set and we can move on and dive straight into the advanced concepts. So again, as a prerequisite, I remind everybody, you have to be able to write some sort of HTML and JavaScript to take on the advanced JavaScript course. So make sure you check out these courses before you take this course. So let's start with a quick refresher. We will dive into each one of them one at a time. So scope, right? So I'm definitely sure that you understand the concept of scope. It's very simple. So for example, let's consider you declare a variable on top of the JavaScript file that you're writing, and you can use this variable anywhere, right? That means it has a global scope. But what if you declare a variable inside a function? Now you can use that variable inside that function and that function only. That means that variable has a local scope. That's the differentiating factor between the local as well as the global scope. Loops are a block of code that can be executed a number of times. So we have three types of loops. We have for loop, we have while loop, and we have do while loop. In terms of for loop, we run the block of code n number of times. The n, that is the times that the code has to be repeated, is provided by the developer. And in case of while loop, we run the loop unless and until the condition is satisfied. Okay, so if the condition holds true, that means the while loop keeps on running. It breaks as soon as the condition is set to false. Same in the case with do while, but with do while, we run the loop at least once, or we run that block of code at least once, even if the condition is false. Okay. So semicolons are like the simplest way of understanding semicolons is the English language. So we use a full stop to complete a sentence in English language. In programming world, we use semicolon to denote the end of expression. These aren't mandatory in JavaScript, but it's always a good practice to end your expressions with semicolons. Comments, we have two ways we can write comments: multi-line comments and single-line comments. Multi-line line comments are the / and the asterisk, right? So we use usually multi-line comments to explain what a function or what the block of code is doing. Usually, at least I like to write it before I write the function to explain the functionality of that specific function. And single-line comments are usually to make sure that the reader understands my reasoning behind naming of the variables and what value that variable will hold. Literal is any value that is written in source code. So for example, a number, boolean, or a string. Expressions. So an expression is a valid unit of code that resolves to a value. So in this example, we have 300 greater than 19. This resolves to the value of 2. Expressions can be further categorized as arithmetic, logical, string, and so on. The example that we are seeing here is of category logical. Now, a task for you is to come up with an arithmetic expression of your own. I'll give an example. 3 plus 7 equals 10. Okay. So types. Now type is very important when we declare a variable. That means we know what specific data type the variable will hold. So in this case, we have variable length equals 10. That means the variable length is of type number. If you were to store a string, this will be of type string. So if the 10 were in double quotes, that means we were holding the data type of string in variable length. Variables are nothing but containers to storing the data value. So if you go back to your calculus where you used to have x's and y's, that's the same concept applied here. It's just a storage for holding a data value. Functions. So functions are a block of code designed to perform a particular task. So in this case, as you can see, this function is a multiplication function. It takes in two parameters, p1 and p2, that is, let's say, number 1 and number 2. Or in this case, it is returning the multiplication of, it's running the multiplication of p1 and p2. Let's consider those are two numbers. Let's say it's 5 and 6. It should return 30 in this case. So the function is written to design a particular task, right? So in this case, it is multiplication. You can create function for all kinds of arithmetic operation you can think of, but even in some cases, like for example, if you want to validate a login information, we can create a function for that specific task. Arrays is a special variable which can hold more than one value at a time. So it can hold different values, it can hold strings, it can hold numbers. And array is an object in JavaScript. Okay. Let us dive a bit deeper into functions because we'll be using functions quite often in this course. So the way you define function is you start with the function keyword and the name of your function followed by parentheses and opening and closing braces, and inside it you write your code that you want to execute. Function also takes in some parameters and returns some values. So usually the parameters you see are passed in when you call on the function. So in case of the previous multiplication you saw, the multiplication function you saw, in that it took in two parameters that had two numbers and it returned a value. So it just returned the product of those two numbers. And inside the function, the parameters behave as local variables. Okay, now the interesting use case of function is on certain events. So for example, let's say if you were to submit a contact form on a web page, in that case, when the user clicks on the submit button on that specific event, you would run a function to submit the form data to your database, right? So you have to attach a event handler to your submit button, and on the event you run a function that specifically takes all that contact information that the user has submitted and passes it on to the database. So arrow functions are nothing but normal functions, but they allow us to write in a much shorter format, and they were introduced in ECMAScript 6. So this is a key differentiating factor between a regular function as well as arrow function. The arrow functions are also called fat arrow because of this specific literal right here. They allow us to write clear and concise code. Declaring arrays. So you already know how to declare an array. In this case, we have an array of fruits, and array again is an object in the JavaScript, and like any object, you have some methods on it. So in this case, when you see console.log and we pass in the array.length, that means it will return the length of 2 because we have 2 items in there. So manipulating arrays. So here are a few examples on how you can manipulate array. So one of the ways is you can use the methods on the array object. So you have for each method in which you try to traverse the array and print out every one of the item in the array. Then if you want to add to it, you can use array.push method. If you want to remove from it from a certain index point, you can use array.splice method. And there are a few methods that you can work on it. We are not going to be covering those in detail. This is just a quick refresher, but I do recommend you checking out the resources on Mozilla Developer Network to understand the other methods and other ways you can manipulate the array. All right, so this was just a quick refresher. I just wanted everybody to get on the same page, and in the next session we are going to be covering the jQuery, as well as understand how we can use jQuery to manipulate the DOM, that is the document object model. And I'll see you in the next session. Take care. Bye-bye.